I needed to feel the pain in that moment for if I stay the same. It felt so bad that I had to make a change. This fear thing is something I need to lean in more towards. Even if I'm scared, let's do it anyways. Whenever you think the tank is empty, there's more in the tank. Challenges build champions. And when these challenges are in the way, that's what builds the grit and builds champions over the course of the long haul.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Flow Over Fear. I am glad you're here today. My guest is Matt Scoletti, and nowadays you may see Matt on American Ninja Warrior doing some crazy gymnastic stuff, or running 100-mile ultra marathons, or 21 marathons in 21 days, or jumping off perfectly good bridges, thankfully with bungee cords attached to his ankles. But that wasn't always the case for Matt. He didn't always have this sense of adventure, or at least he didn't lean into it. At one time, he was an alcoholic, drinking himself into blackouts on weekends and waking up with tremendous amounts of anxiety, barely able to even make breakfast in the morning without having an anxiety attack. But after finding sobriety, he was able to lean into this side of adventure that changed his life and changed the trajectory. And now he helps others to do the same. Matt Scoletti is a widely regarded international keynote speaker on mental health and creating breakthroughs. He's created breakthroughs in his own life, including going from an alcoholic, divorced and obese, to a two-time world record holder, Navy SEAL Kokoro grad, and he once ran 21 marathons in 21 days for charity. He speaks from the heart and shares stories of his own setbacks, screw-ups, and obstacles so that you can learn from his mistakes and become your best self. And today he also runs the Savage Adventure Camps for people seeking their own adventure, which is something that we talk about towards the end of this interview. So I hope you enjoy my interview with Matt Scoletti. Hey, everyone. I'm really, really excited about this guest today. Matt Scoletti is with me, and he is just a rock star doing tons and tons of amazing things. I mean, it's just incredible, all of the things that you're doing, Matt. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Adam. I'm pumped to be here, my friend. I'm ready to dive in whatever direction you want to go.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's a lot of different directions we could go because you are, a man after my own heart, as we say, because lots of different adventure. You're doing lots of longer endurance races. You're jumping off of perfectly fine bridges, thankfully attached to a bungee cord. But, you're doing a lot of really, really cool stuff. How I want to get into your background because, I know you have a background with a lot of challenges. You have alcohol in your background. You have mental health issues in your background, something that, I can relate to. And I know that people that may be listening can relate to. Can you kind of jump into maybe an origin story, where you grew up, how you grew up, what it was like growing up as Matt Scoletti?
Yeah, I would love to. So I grew up, and actually I still live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, grew up about 20 miles east of the city in a little small town called Murraysville. And I would really say my childhood, and I almost weirdly have some guilt over it because it was so good. I grew up with both parents were healthy. My dad coached me in basketball for a few years. I did well in school, and I fell in love with basketball at a young age and played all through high school and really just had a lot of things going for me. And I was very blessed to have all that. I don't think I knew how blessed I was until after looking back at how good my childhood was. But I will share one thing that happened from childhood that helped shape me is in 5th grade, I had to give my first speech in front of the entire school, and it was for student government, which, Adam, I did not want to run for, but I was nominated by a quote unquote friend of mine.
The people wanted you. People wanted you.
I don't know if that's the case, but I get up in front of the whole school. My speech is like 5 sentences total. I left my speech in my locker, but I had it memorized. I got 4 sentences in and I blanked out in front of the entire school. And it was probably still the most embarrassing moment of my life. My teacher had to prompt me after 10 seconds of dead silence to finish the speech. I finally said the last sentence, which I still remember was about this suggestion box in the principal's office. I'll never forget it. And I tell the story because I screwed up in front of hundreds of people, but I told myself it wasn't that part of the story that meant anything. It was the story I told myself, which was I am a bad public speaker. And I told myself that story through grade school, through high school, through college, even in my early 20s, because of one speech when I was like 10. And I'm like, that shouldn't be the case. I shouldn't be telling myself this story because of a sample size of one from, 20 plus years ago. And I just think about that and I think I could have really overcome that quicker if I just kept getting up and giving speeches. But I think that did drive me to want to become a motivational speaker and a race MC and do all these fun things down the road because to your podcast name, it's a fear. It scares me, and it still is a minor fear of mine to this day. But to go back to the story, so I graduated 4.0 or whatever it was, 4.4 GPA in high school, was dating the head cheerleader. Like it literally looked like I had everything after I graduated high school. And I went off to college and the wheels started to fall off. I got introduced. I shouldn't say I got introduced. I introduced myself to the drinking scene. I'm not placing blame on anyone. I put myself in those situations and I partied 4 nights a week freshman year, 5 nights sophomore year, 6 nights junior year, and just full blown alcoholism senior year. I mean, there was not a day I was sober from start to finish. And I told myself, I'll get a job and then I will move on and not be a drunken idiot. And then I realized it's not that easy. It was just like this identity that I had in my head of I'm the drinking fun party guy now. And I also took a job in Boston after college selling spring break travel packages. Was not the smartest move to try to get out of alcoholism. And
right.
It got worse. I actually got fired from that job 2 years in because of drinking. I mean, they didn't say that, but that's really why I showed up drunk to some of these events and I just couldn't handle myself. So came back to Pittsburgh, took a job in the business field like 16 years ago. And I'll just share real quick. I hit my rock bottom in 2011. I was about 27, 28 years old. And it was just one of those moments where I woke up hungover, which was not surprising. It was Sunday morning. This is 10 plus years into drinking heavily. And I looked at myself in the mirror, and for the first time that I can remember, I hated who was looking back. And it sucks to say that, but it's just true. I was 60 pounds overweight, 27 years old. I felt like I was 87. I had no confidence. I had no real friends. I couldn't hold a relationship. And finally, in that moment, I played out really the thing that helped change me besides God was if I keep doing this for 10 more years, if I keep this lifestyle of drinking heavily almost every single night, eating horribly, not really exercising much, I was convinced that I would be in jail or dead for sure. And that was the moment that I realized it's not my friends, my family, my coworkers that are making me drink. It's me. It's me putting the alcohol inside of me, which was empowering because that means that I can make the change. And that was the moment that started the new trajectory of my life that I'm happy to get into or dive into more of the alcohol story, whatever you want. But that's a little background.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that, and I think it's so important that you are sharing that, and so vital. And I'm grateful that you shared too that you grew up with this somewhat normal or not and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but not traumatic childhood like you would expect from a lot of people who get into addiction or alcoholism, because for both of us, we have, I mean, as you're sharing that story, I realize we have so much in common as far as our stories are concerned. I didn't start drinking till I was in college. I had 2 parents who loved each other and they loved me and they helped, they supported me throughout my childhood. And I felt that guilt as you did about, maybe screwing up my life, even though I had a great childhood, Could you talk more about that guilt that you had, like, and maybe how it showed up, and was that contributing to you leaning into alcohol more, or how your life went during that time?
Yeah, that's such a good question. That's really fascinating that you share that too, Adam, because a lot of podcasts and groups I've talked to that have struggled with alcohol, to your point, it's been a traumatic childhood or there's been something that's happened. So I feel like it's sort of rare what what we've dealt with. And I don't know that I fully had guilt until I was into my mid to late 20s. Like I really didn't understand how good I had it in high school and even being blessed to be able to go to a good college down at University of Richmond. And I don't think it was really until probably the end stages of my alcohol addiction where I was looking back and just thinking, oh my goodness, I had it so good. And I think that's part of, I feel like I have a little bit of rebel in me by nature. Like I like going against the grain a lot of the times. And it's almost a part of what lights the fire in me to stay sober. It almost feels like sobriety is rebellious because it's abnormal in today's age. I mean, I live in Pittsburgh, close to downtown Pittsburgh. A lot of the social things you do revolve around drinking. And I don't go that direction. So yeah, the guilt, I almost think it might have been like, I don't know if it was rebelling against my parents or just rebelling against this squeaky clean childhood that I had. And it was like, oh, now I'm in college and just I can do whatever I want. Like there's nobody looking over me. Let's do whatever I want. And I did. And it was fun at the time. Like I have fun, silly stories from that. But it started a downward trend and I don't know if you're like me like this too, Adam. I have a very addictive personality. So when I go all in on something, I am all in and there's no looking back. And I just happened to go all in on the wrong thing for many years.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I could definitely relate to that idea. It's always been an obsession or an obsessive based personality. Even when I was younger, it was like obsession. Yeah. And how did the mental health part play in? Like, were you, when you started drinking, did you realize that there was some kind of mental health issue that you were battling, or did it arise out of your drinking? What was that part, and how did that play out in your life?
So yeah, that's really interesting. And I think the mental health part, I look back and I think about it now. I don't know that and I think this is the scary thing. I didn't know I had a problem and I hid it very well. And people closest to me, I don't know how you were, Adam, but I have one brother, he didn't know. My parents didn't know. My close friends didn't know. I was so good. I would drink before church. Like I read in church. That was one of the rock bottoms I hit too, was I showed up at a church function hammered out of my mind. And thank God she did this. A woman at the front door turned me away. And she said, Matt, she knew me very well. She's like, something's wrong with you right now. I don't know if you're on drugs or you're drinking, but I can't let you in. You're going to embarrass yourself in the church. And she turned me away. And this was very close to that rock bottom in 2011. But I don't think I really knew as this was all going on until I hit that rock bottom that I had a problem. Like had you met me in 2008 and said, hey, Matt, I know you've been drinking a lot. I think you have a problem. I probably would have said, Adam, you're crazy. Like I'm just doing what a 25-year-old does. Like this is just my life. And I probably would have denied it. So the mental health stuff, I didn't really start diving into that. I'm 40 now until probably my mid 30s. Looking back, I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until I think I was 38, just a couple years ago. So I didn't really know this stuff. And maybe it's just a different era, like growing up in the 80s and 90s, like this wasn't really talked about. And now looking back, it's like, oh, maybe I did have some of these issues, but didn't realize it until I was in my late 30s.
Yeah, we definitely didn't talk about it in the 80s and 90s, and I remember that. Like we were so we were so entrenched in the idea of the DARE program and like don't do drugs, which didn't help a lot, right?
No,
yeah.
You know what? I'm very lucky. I don't know about your full background. I'm very lucky I did not dive into drugs. I remember thinking like alcohol messes me up so bad. I can't even imagine doing anything else.
Yeah.
So I'm lucky I didn't go down that road.
I laugh. Yeah, I laugh because I felt the same way. I knew I had like this anxiety problem, and I was like thinking of like, well, cocaine or heroin, those things are addictive. I don't want to get into those. But alcohol, no, I'm good. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was the most weird. It's the weirdest thing when you get into that. And you've considered yourself kind of a functioning, or during that time, more of like a quote unquote functioning alcoholic, right? So how would you define, or like, what did it look like on a day-to-day basis as far as how you were drinking and how you were functioning throughout the day?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, I would say functioning alcoholic, meaning I did hold down a job the whole time. And I'm blessed to say I never drank on the job, but basically, as soon as I clocked out, I mean, as soon as I got home, I would start drinking. And I think the sad part is a lot of times I would be drinking by myself. Like I like watching Seinfeld or whatever. And over dinner, it wasn't like a glass of wine. Like I would do 3 or 4 shots while I'm watching some random comedy on TV. And this is on like a Monday, Tuesday night. And then on the weekends were a complete blur. Like once Friday hit, my buddies would come over. Actually, normally Thursday night also we would go hard, but Friday night, get out of work 4 or 5 o'clock. They'd come over at 5:30, 6 o'clock. I would normally not remember anything past 8 o'clock on Friday. And then I would get up Saturday and Sunday morning, and it was to the point where I'm like, I was so hungover that I would just start drinking again. And I'm lucky too that I lived in an area that was, or unlucky maybe, that I could walk everywhere. So I'd park my car on Friday after work and know most of the time I wouldn't get back in until Monday. So great for me. I could drink the entire weekend and not quote unquote worry about it. So I would go really, really hard Friday night into Sunday night. And, I'm sure there was a morning or two where maybe I ripped a shot in the morning just to be like, get back to normal and get rid of the hangover, which is clearly the worst thing you could do. But it was definitely to the point on weekends where the anxiety was so bad. My only remedy to that was to start drinking again. And that's just a scary slope.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk about the anxiety a little bit more too. Like what was that? Was that something that was onset by the alcohol? Like it was just like you woke up hungover, not remembering the night before, and just kind of rattled or just descending into these anxious thoughts. Was that how that kind of came about?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And it's so weird. I was just talking to a friend about this. I would get anxious, and I wasn't an anxious person in high school. Like, I think it was really the alcohol and that addiction that made me this anxious person. I would come downstairs some Saturday and Sunday mornings and just stare at like eggs and oatmeal and be like, oh my God, I don't know. Like, I don't know what to eat. Like, this is insane. And I would get anxious over stuff that's the simplest things. What shoes should I wear when I walk down the street? And I would just stare at them and get nervous about it and like sweating. And so I'm like, well, if I just do a couple of shots, then I'm happy-go-lucky Matt and I have nothing to worry about anymore. And I would, and then I wouldn't worry about it. So yeah, it was almost like these were not big decisions that I was getting anxious over. It was really small stuff that I just had no confidence in myself. And that anxiety that I built up in my head, which was just a story I'm telling myself. Another story was any family party, which none of my family knew this, I would drink significantly before the family got there. And then it would look like I was just nursing a couple beers over the course of the day. They didn't know I was 8 shots in before I started nursing the beer because of that social anxiety, which again, I was never socially anxious in high school. I built that by the habits that I did in college and then after college of just, there are some people in college I never spoke to sober. I mean, that's how bad it was. I mean, I was drunk every time I saw them. And I remember seeing some people and thinking, oh, this is weird. Like, I have to talk to them at lunch sober. Like, that's odd. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, this doesn't feel normal, which is even sicker that it felt normal to be drunk every time I saw them. So, yeah. It was. I don't even remember where that original question was, but there's your derail for the day right there.
No, that's good. I mean, I could certainly remember times in my college life where I met people who I had a full on like friendship with, apparently, that I don't know who they are because I met them in a blackout. Yeah. And I mean, I guess, thank God we can laugh about that now. But I mean, yeah, at the time, it's a lot of anxiety. It's a lot of pain. It's a lot of, struggle. And so going to that in 2011, you say you're 60 pounds overweight, you're full of anxiety. You look in the mirror one morning, you see the person that you don't like, and talk about that transformational moment. What's going through your head at that moment, and what are the next steps you take to move into sobriety and to start changing your life?
Yeah. So one of the other things that I'll share that I started doing, and this was just, I'm lucky I did it. I was journaling. This all led up to that moment, looking at myself in the mirror in 2011. I'd been journaling for about 3 months prior to that. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to journal in the morning and let's just see what I say. I don't think I had a game plan. I just started writing every morning. And that same morning in 2011, I read through the journal entries for the first time. And it's sad to bring it up, but it's just the truth. Every journal entry was basically the same. It was like, my head's hurting. I don't really want to do anything today. If it was a weekday, I'd say I have to go to work today, which sucks. I don't want to do that. I want to do nothing. If it was a weekend, it would say something like, at least I can start drinking again. That'll help me through the day today. And it was the same thing. And as I'm looking at myself in the mirror, I thought, I journaled for 3 months. Had I journaled for 10 years, this is really painful to say, but it's true, they would have all been similar for 10 years. And I just thought, I don't want to be, and as I said, I'm 40 now. I don't want to be 40 and 50 and either be in jail, dead, not be able to hold a relationship, not have real friends. And that future pain that I was feeling, and I let myself feel it, Adam. I was bawling my eyes out because I think I needed that. I needed to feel the pain in that moment for if I stay the same. It felt so bad that I had to make a change. And I'll tell you, this is by sheer luck. About 2 weeks later, I attended this business conference and there was a health and wellness speaker there. His name's Chris Johnson. This is 13 years ago. I heard him speak. This is in front of hundreds of people. I never do this. As soon as he's done speaking, I get up and I basically rushed up to him and I said, I need to introduce myself. Here's a part of my story. You think you can help me? And this guy still mentors me to this day. 15 years later, I talk to him probably once or twice a month on the phone. He's my guy. And I mean, he will never admit it, but I mean, he really helped save my life. So I think that, and then getting around people, like my habits just started changing. Instead of staying up until, normally pass out drunk at like midnight, walk back home by myself, which I can't believe nothing bad happened there. But I would normally stay up until 11, midnight, 1 a.m., and then wake up hungover. And then when I started to try to stop drinking, I just realized, well, why am I staying awake? Like, I'm just sitting here watching TV. I'm going to go to bed. So I started getting up early in the morning, going to the gym and just meeting those people. And it felt like a whole new world. I'm like, people get up at 6 and go to the gym? Like, that sounds crazy to me. And now I get up at 4:30 and it's like my favorite time of day. So this whole new healthy world started opening up. I started meeting people that ran, that went to the gym, that were healthy, that didn't drink. And I just couldn't believe these people existed. And that obsession started to change from, I don't want to be that old guy. This is more fun. Like, let's see what happens if we go this direction.
I love it. And did basically that lifestyle change, was that the catalyst to get sober? Did you do AA or anything like that, if you don't mind me asking, or any other programs?
Yeah, you can ask whatever you'd like. I guess you'd say I did it mainly by myself. And I think it was because of the embarrassment. I didn't want to share with anybody, my parents, my family, what I was going through. And some people will ask that and then say, like, that's inspiring. You did it by yourself. And my response to that is always, thank you. And I wish I didn't. I wish I would have asked for help and got people around me that could help me through it, because I had a relapse in 2013 that lasted a few years, and it wasn't as bad as it was before. But I think if I'd have got around a group of people, whether it's AA or some other group, and saw the road that was ahead of me, it would have kept me sober through that whole time instead of having a setback in 2013. So yeah, I did it, I guess, technically on my own with a mentor and with the big guy as my mentor, but that was about it.
Nice. And how did your faith play into that? Like, were you faithful before getting sober? Was it something that became stronger after you got sober? What did that look like?
Yeah, that's basically exactly what happened. So I was raised Catholic and always a believer in God. And I think, I mean, it has to be the higher power that helped me through that, because I mean, I was on a trajectory that was just, I mean, I was spiraling to the ground. And I think it would be ego of me to say I did this whole thing by myself, and just not true. So yeah, I think I had multiple mentors, God being one, that I have to say was a big reason why I got through it.
Yeah, I love the aspect of community and everything. And so kind of talking about the, saying that you were keeping this sobriety piece to yourself because you were embarrassed about maybe who you were at one point. What changed? Why share it now? What changed your mindset to want to be more open about your alcoholism, your journey to sobriety? Why share now?
Yeah, that's a great question, Adam. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. And I think that was never the game plan. I think in 2011, once this journey started, there was no game plan of like, let's go compete in physique bodybuilding and get on American Ninja Warrior, run ultra marathons. Like, that was never an idea. It was like, okay, let's get sober and let's just try to do that. And then once that started happening, I think what I didn't realize what was going to happen was people started seeing the transition, and there was people that hadn't seen me in 3 months, 6 months, and it happened pretty quick. Like, I lost 60 pounds from October 2011, right around Halloween, and I stepped on stage for my first physique bodybuilding show in May of 2012. So it was like 6 or 7 months, and it was a significant change. Like, and it was mainly, I think, beer and alcohol, weight, and eating pizzas in the middle of the night and all that stuff on top of working out. But people started asking, what happened? Like, what did you do? And I think the more people that were asking, it was only really Facebook at the time. I started sharing a little bit of the journey there. I wasn't sure how to position it, but I started sharing, and people started reaching out saying, will you speak to this group, or will you come into this school and tell your story? And I said, I would love to, but I'm terrified to speak in public. And I still had that in my head. So that's what motivated me even more to want to become a speaker, because now I think I have this story that can help people, but I don't have the confidence to share it. And I was, Adam, I was bad. I was a really bad speaker for years, just because I didn't have confidence. I had a bad story in my head of I wasn't good at it. And it took me many reps to get better and better over time. So it's a constant. I'm still working on it, and it's fun that I don't think anyone will ever give the perfect speech. So it's fun to try to get better at it. But I think that's what it was. It was sort of the feedback that people were giving me about being inspired by the journey. And I thought, well, let's start sharing this.
Hey everyone, I interrupt this program to introduce you to a powerful tool that will help you gain clarity on your vision and accelerate your growth and achievement. If you're listening to this show, it is likely that you have an exciting vision for your life. But the problem is that we often get caught up in the day-to-day. We get distracted, we face uncertainty, overwhelm, and self-doubt. And as a result, the gap between where you are and where you want to be seems insurmountable. And that's why I created a framework for how you can turn your vision into strategic, disciplined action that will accelerate your results in the next 90 days. I call it the Vision Reflection Retreat. It is a 2-day solo excursion designed to reignite passion and adventure into your busy life and realign your focus toward your why. This is the very same framework that I use every 90 days to reflect on my own life and my vision and set my goals for the next quarter. And it has been a game changer. And the good news is that I'm giving away this Vision Reflection Retreat guidebook for free when you sign up for my newsletter. Simply go to flowoverfear.com/retreat and download your free guide and enjoy the journey. Yeah. Yeah. And it's really interesting how found something that you were afraid of and you were being asked to do it. And where a lot of people might just say, no, 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 I'm just not good at it and then stop there. But you leaned into it. And then not only with speaking, which by the way, you could never tell now that you were ever a bad speaker. You're fantastic on the podcast and elsewhere. But yeah, but how did fear guide you during that time of newly found sobriety? You at one point were looking at eggs and oatmeal, anxious because you didn't know what to make for breakfast, but now you're sober and you're facing those thoughts without any crutch. How was fear guiding you, and how are you navigating it?
I love how you said that, without any crutch. And that's true. And the way you're asking that is really taking me back to the first time I was in the gym, like 6 months, no, probably less than that, 4 months into the sobriety journey. And a trainer came up to me who I'm still friends with and said, "You should compete." And I was like, "Compete in what? Like, what do you mean?" And so he started sharing about these physique events. And I said, his name's Ali. I'm like, "Ali, I'm not wearing a Speedo." And he's like, "You don't have to wear a Speedo. You can wear these board shorts." And I'm like, "Okay, then I'll think about it." But he basically forced me to sign up for this physique bodybuilding show. And I think it gave me something to shoot for. And I remember the first time getting on stage, I was like, you get this fake tan and everything. And I was sweating so bad that the fake tan started like dripping a little bit on my armpits. But
Right.
then I also remember after it ended, it was legitimately, I remember sitting down in my house at the time that night and thinking, and I'm getting goosebumps as I'm getting ready to share this. That was the first thing I was proud of in a decade. And I thought, and I was also scared to death to get up there. And I hadn't been scared like that in years because I could just drink my way through any fear, but I wouldn't have that sense of accomplishment and pride. I didn't even win the first show. I got second place, but it was like, wow, I'm proud of something. And it wasn't because of like a six pack or whatever. It was just like the discipline of doing that for 7 months and the growth that I had. It wasn't in the body, it was up here. It was in the mind that made it special. And I think that was the first time without me realizing it at the time that maybe this fear thing is something I need to lean in more towards. Even if I'm scared, let's do it anyways. And I
Yeah.
think that was a takeaway I got without even really knowing it at the time.
Interesting. So fear basically gave you this feedback once you were or once you did something that made you scared, gave you this feedback that, wow, it can also be exciting.
And it
That's
still
fascinating.
does. It
Yeah.
it drives me like a maniac to this day. I mean, if it's something that I'm scared of, and I've been blessed to do a decent amount of podcasts. Before we hopped on here, I still have that voice in my head, like, what if he really asked me something and I have no idea what I'm going to say? Like that voice still is there. And then, we start talking and it goes away. But people ask me like, how do you speak without being nervous? And I'm like, I'm nervous every single time somebody hands me a microphone. It's just a lot of reps that I've put in and I feel like I'm prepared, but I'm going to get scared when I don't get nervous because I think the nerves mean it's important to me and it's hopefully something where I can add value to other people.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to my next question about calculus. And I'm totally kidding.
I was like, thank God you're not. I started sweating right when you said calculus.
Right.
Like, this was my last D, I think, was in calculus.
Oh, wow. You did better than me. That's for sure. Oh, man. So you started getting into the physique shows and doing a lot of the bodybuilding kind of into that world, and then doing some more adventurous stuff. What kind of talk about your path and your trajectory outward from there? 'Cause I'd love to hear how you kept leaning into fear.
Yeah, I think so. It started out with these physique events. And I mean, I was scared every time I got up there on stage. And this was in 2011, or no, not 2012. I competed a few times and actually won the physique athlete of the year in 2012 in like the tri-state area. Cause I think I competed, I think it was 5 or 6 times and won 3 or 4 of the shows. So I was like, this is exciting. I competed more in 2013. And then I met my then girlfriend at the time. And this is in no way, shape, or form blaming her for anything. She was not an alcoholic by any stretch, but she liked to drink wine. And I remember we went on our first trip together, and I thought, what if I just have a little bit? Like, what if I just do it on vacation? What if that's it? And, that's not a great thought for a former alcoholic. And it started out just on vacations, but I would drink significantly. I would drink, like, when she went to the bathroom, I would go drink a little bit more. And again, it wasn't as bad as it was before. But in 2016, this is the real sobriety day. July 21st of 2016 was the last time I ever drank. It was at a Luke Bryan concert with my family. It was supposed to be this great, amazing event. I got really hammered and acted like an idiot and just thought, this needs to stop. So some of the other adventures that I've had, I don't know if I get bored easily at them, if that's what it is, but like, I feel like when I have some success in certain areas and do really well, I think, okay, that part of my life is done. Like, let's go try something else. And 2019 was really the year that I started getting into endurance running. And I don't know if you remember this story, but here in Pittsburgh, there's a Jewish synagogue. It's called the Tree of Life. And in 2018, there was a shooting in the synagogue, and 11 people were killed in this mass shooting. And I had always wanted to run a marathon, but I never really had a reason in my head to do it. And being a diehard Pittsburgh guy, I remember I was in Vegas at the time with a couple friends, and I flew back, and I was like, I want to do something in support of this community. And again, I'm Catholic. I've never been involved in the Jewish community. I think I sent them an email and said, I'm thinking about running the Pittsburgh Marathon in honor of the Tree of Life. What do you think? And they were like, that would be amazing. So I strapped an 11-pound weight vest to myself, 1 pound for every victim of the shooting, and ran the Pittsburgh Marathon. And it got like, this is never a reason why I would do it, but like Runner's World picked up the story, and like the local news had me on and all this stuff. And it was just cool because I didn't care about my name being on it. I just wanted people to remember that like somebody was running to prove that love conquers hate in the long run. Like that was the whole mission of the whole thing. And what ended up happening was, I succeeded in running the marathon. A buddy asked me 2 weeks later to run the Cleveland Marathon. And I had some friends saying like, why would you run another one? You just ran one a week and a half ago. And I thought, I feel good. Like I'm going to go run it. So I ran the Cleveland Marathon, and it was easier to run with 11 less pounds on me. So I ran it a lot faster. And I just started, again, this is the obsessive person in me. I thought, how much further can I run? Like, how far can you go? And I started seeing that there's 50-mile ultra marathons and 100-mile ultra marathons. And actually, it was during COVID, and this leads into all these different adventures. But April of 2020, I'm sure you remember, like that sort of when COVID really ramping up. I was supposed to do my first 100-mile ultra marathon in South Carolina. And obviously they canceled it. And I called the race director immediately and I said, can I do it? Can I still come down and do it like the course by myself? And he's like, no, that is a terrible idea. You're not going to do that. I said, okay, fine. I said, what if I run it on my neighborhood street and I log the miles on my watch and send it to you? And he said, yeah, you can do that if you want. And because I was already trained, I'm like, I want to do something. So I ran, I think our street was like 0.3 of a mile long. So it was like 275 laps up in my street, and nobody had anything to do at the time. So all the neighbors came out and like they were supporting from their front yards. And it was one of the best experiences of my life. I got to mile 80 and basically had this breakdown of physical pain. Like I've never been in that much physical pain before. I knew that it would suck and it would be horrible, but I never knew legs could hurt that bad. And I remember calling my mentor at mile 80, and I'm laying on the ground in my living room, like foam rolling my legs out. And he goes, did you think there was going to be pain in this event? And I was like, oh man, you really have to say that to me now? And he's like, you need to get up and run 20 more miles. And I was like, yes, sir. Yes, I do. So I got up and finished the rest of the 20 miles. And I think it's like that fear, like 100-mile ultra marathon sounded so insane to me. Like nobody can run 100 miles in less than 30 hours. That's just not possible. And I think that fear to the whole point of what we're talking about, drove me. And like, it's just fun to see what we're capable of, because I think the limits are non-existent. I mean, you can keep blowing the roof off these limits, and it's fun to try.
Yeah, well, and you made it infinitely more terrifying by just making it a 1/3 mile loop over and over again. That sounds mind numbing.
It was pretty boring. Yeah, it was definitely pretty boring. I'm glad that our neighbors came out, because that would have been even worse if they hadn't. But yeah, it was definitely a boring track, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And you've done a lot of this, these activities, ultra marathons and Ironmans, American Ninja Warrior, which is totally cool. It's amazing. What are some of the top lessons that you've learned from doing these activities, really pushing your body to the extreme, and how do you take them forward into whatever comes next?
I think one of the things I've learned is, and I'll just speak for myself, but I think it holds true for a lot of us. Whenever you think the tank is empty, there's more in the tank. And I've realized that over time. I say this thing in a lot of my speeches because I think it's true. I think challenges build champions. And this may go back to my upbringing too. I don't think I had enough challenges in my face at the time. And I think I breezed through the first 18 years of my life. And all the growth comes with the challenge to me. It's like the things that you don't want to do. I have this cold plunge out on my balcony. I never want to get in it ever.
No.
Like, it doesn't matter. Even if it's 85 degrees out, I still don't want to get in it, but I'm going to get in it because it's that muscle and it's that growth. And I think all these events that I've done, it's just proving to myself that I'm capable of more than I think. And when these challenges are in the way, I think that's what builds the grit and builds champions over the course of the long haul. So I think it also comes down to the truth. Like, I love this idea of what the truth is. And I'll share real quick, just because you mentioned American Ninja Warrior. I shared this on my social media like a couple months ago. Here's a story about truth, which I was on American Ninja Warrior in 2015. And if you do the chronological math of this whole story, I had the relapse in 2013 and got sober in 2016. What I shared recently, I held this in for, what is that? Over a decade, whatever it was, over a decade, almost a decade. I was so they featured me on American Ninja Warrior. They featured the story of this guy overcame an alcohol addiction. He's a physique champion. This is all on NBC, millions of people seeing it. What I shared recently was I was hammered out of my mind on the show, and nobody knew it. Like the producer, the camera guy, they didn't know it. I mean, they had never met me, so they didn't know what I was like. And luckily I wasn't like slurring speech or anything, but I was blasted on the show. And that was the only way in my head. It's that old thinking of, I'm so anxious. There's millions of people that watch this show on TV. There's thousands of people here. I can just loosen up by having one or two shots, which turn into 6 or 7. And, like, I was entertaining. And I think that's part of why they put me on. They showed my piece of the course. But I think the truth, I wish I would have admitted that truth much sooner. I've told this story to like high schools and grade schools all over the place. And I positioned the story that I lived my dream. I got on this stage like I wanted to be on American Ninja Warrior. But the real story is I hid from the truth for 9, 10 plus years, which was I was still struggling and I didn't have the guts to tell anybody about it.
Yeah. Wow. How has the truth set you free from that front then? And by the way, thank you for sharing that. I know that's that's a big challenge, and it's hard to share those kinds of stories, but I think they do help. And it certainly helps me to hear it. How has the truth set you free on things like that when you have something, that you've kept a secret for so long, but how does it help?
Yeah, I think it's just, I think that this is just for me. When I share my truth, it's just like, it just feels so freeing. Like it was a weight off my chest that it was almost like, you're carrying this 50-pound, 100-pound ruck on your back. And I shared that, and then I just took it off and let it go. And I didn't even know that's how I was going to feel when I shared it. But I thought, I'm sharing this story in these high schools, and it's not the real story. Like, I'm telling them part of the truth, but I'm not giving the big reveal at the end. And I think for me, when I've been absolutely honest, whether it is on a podcast or with people individually on my social media, I think that's when I feel my best. And also, I think that's what inspires other people. I used to go, this is part of the reason I sucked as a speaker early on. I would paint this picture of this glorious life that I had of being on American Ninja Warrior, straight A student, winning physique events. And it's like, that's like half the story. You're not sharing the setbacks and the setup to get to where you are, which is, to me, that's what people relate to. And like, that's life. Like, if I just sat here and told you the achievements, that's a load of crap. I mean, that's just not the story. So I think, and I don't want to give unsolicited advice, but like anyone that's struggling, if you can share that truth with whoever it is that you know is in your corner. For me, I mean, I've had a therapist for a while now that has helped me just talk out some of these issues, and it's really helped me in a big way. I still meet with her once a month, but I think sharing the truth just, it's that weight off of you, and it's just a total release of like, oh, now I can breathe. And I'm not scared to, I mean, it's not like I share everything, but I'm not scared of the setbacks and problems and issues that I've had in my life, because that is a big part of my life.
Yeah. Well, that's so huge, and I think I love that idea of sharing it with somebody who's in your corner. Especially like that's a great starting point, especially with a therapist or somebody who is a trusted mentor or somebody who you can trust. It doesn't have to be a shout out on social media, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to bring this into the world, but sharing it with someone that you can trust is a great starting point to healing. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that here. And now you've built, and by the way, I don't want to overlook the fact that your philanthropy work is pretty remarkable too. You know, we've raised $150,000 through a lot of the work and the races that you've done, which is amazing. And now you've built this Savage Adventure Camps, which I want to kind of get into and talk about. So you're giving this platform to people who can want to live into their own adventure, and in some way. Can you share a little bit about that and what you're doing there?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking. Look, I'm actually wearing the shirt. I got my Savage
Nice.
Adventure Camp shirt on today. But yeah, so it's so funny how life works, I think, Adam, because also 2 years ago, if you would have said, hey, Matt, you're going to host these adventure camps, I'd have been like, what? We're like, that's not in the game plan. So I did this thing where you run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours, like 3 years ago. And it was in Colorado. It was in Colorado Springs. I did it with a couple buddies. And so we did it. It was one friend and two guys I didn't know. They were friends of his. And I left the event that weekend and I was like, I now feel like I have three best friends, just because I think doing something difficult with a group of people just meshes you that much quicker. And I thought, I want to do something like this in my hometown in Pittsburgh. So I rented this little cabin. I think it had 6 beds in it. And I put it out like to friends. And I think I put it on social media, like, let's get together. If you want to come to Pittsburgh, we'll host you. We have this cabin. And within I think it was the first 24 hours, 21 people signed up. And I'm like, okay, 6, not enough. Like, we need a bigger cabin. This is not good. So we rented this lodge. It was on the same camp and we got a bigger lodge. So I think it's 25 people came. And so that we're going to run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. Like, that was the game plan. And as the event approached and like on day one, people were asking me like, what's the next event? And I was like, this is a one-time, like, this is supposed to be it. Like, this is all that it was going to be. This was last March. So this idea of having these adult adventure camps was like, okay, there's there's friendships being built here over the course of a weekend that some people were leaving saying they've had friends for 15 years they don't feel as close with as they do somebody they just met 2.5 days ago. So it was like, there's people need this. Like, there is definitely a need for doing difficult things with a group that of like-minded people over the course of a weekend. And so we did a second one in Colorado. We did a second one in Colorado in September of last year. We had 25 people. We did our third one this past March, a few months ago. We had 55 people. And then we're doing another one October 10th to the 13th in West Virginia. And it's going to be, they're not all running events. This one is going to be, we're doing whitewater rafting, we're doing rappelling, rock climbing, and then we'll do like some personal growth. People stand up and get out of their comfort zone and share some things in front of the group. And we try to keep it intimate, like 25 people ish. So it's created something that I didn't even know needed to be created. And to see the bonds that have been built. And again, I don't think this has anything to do with me. I think it's the people that show up and they bond with one another. And the best thing I get is a text from somebody who they got together. And there's one guy from New Jersey, one woman from Maine. This guy drove from New Jersey to Maine to help pace this woman in a 50K. And I got a random picture. Look who I'm with in Maine. Like, I drove up to see her and they met at camp. And I'm like, that's what it's all about. Like, helping one another through difficult things. And now we're building bonds with each other that I think will last a lifetime. So it kind of happened out of nowhere, but now it's something that, like my obsessive personality, I'm all in on it and we're having a good time with it. So, and I'm doing stuff out of my comfort zone. I've never been whitewater rafting. That's scares the heck out of me. This high ropes course we did in Colorado, it wasn't like 10 feet above the ground, Adam. It was like 40 feet up, and you're climbing up like a tree that has these little handholds on it. And our group said I made it look easy. I was shaking the whole way. So like, this is not, I'm out of my comfort zone too. And we're all doing stuff that pushes ourselves. But yeah, we call it Savage Adventure Camp. And the logo is actually a woman who carried this log. I think she was 58 years old last year when she did the 4 miles every 4 hours, 48 hours. She finished and she found this like half a tree is what we called it, and carried this log over the finish line. And I'm like crying watching it. It was like one of the most inspiring things I've ever seen. Her name's Rhonda. And I'm like, Rhonda, if we ever create a logo, you are the logo because you're unbelievably impressive. So she is. She'll be 60 this year. It's a 60-year-old woman is the logo of Savage Adventure Camp. So
I love
all
that.
ages. It's all ages and backgrounds that come out.
All inclusive. And yeah, it sounds amazing. And I can't speak more highly to the idea of just coming together, doing something extreme or out of the ordinary in that to build this community of people that will be lifelong friends. So true. And it's great work that you're doing on that front. So you have the Savage Adventure Camps, you're speaking. Where can people find you if they want to look, if they want to pursue the adventure camp that you have, or hire you as a speaker? Where can they find you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very active on Instagram, which is just my name at Matt Scoletti. If you want to come to camp, I mean, you could DM me on there, or my website is the same name. It's just mattscoletti.com, and you can check that out. I respond to every DM. I love chatting with people about anything that's really anything, but especially someone, if you're going through a setback or you need some help with something, health and wellness. I love talking about all that stuff. So yeah, anybody feel free to reach out. I love having these discussions.
Awesome. So yeah, at Matt Scoletti on Instagram. And Matt, thank you so much for being here. We are kindred spirits, my man. This is awesome. I'm really glad to have talked to you, brother.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited for our friendship and growth moving forward too, my friend.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for all the work you've done. Congratulations on all the success you've had, and most importantly, the sobriety that you have too. Thanks for being here. And thank you to everybody for showing up today and listening to this episode or watching this episode on YouTube. If you like it, please subscribe or give it a like and share it with a friend who might need or want this episode. It's sharing these kinds of episodes too, the ones that can help us heal, that make the most difference. So share Matt's message, and yeah, thanks Matt for being here.
Thanks for having me, Adam. I appreciate it, my friend.
You bet. Thanks everybody for being here. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me today on Flow Over Fear. If you are liking this show, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. That way you'll be first to know when I drop a new episode, including interviews or trainings or dad jokes. That's right, dad jokes. Add a little levity to your life. And if you liked this episode in particular and you think somebody can get something from it, please share it with a friend. And that way we'll spread the message together. Thanks again for joining me today. We'll see you next time.